Hi everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Cozy Up for English. In today's episode, we will be answering the question, what is the difference between how much and how many? But before we do anything else, don't forget to cozy up so we can get started. Now here we go. In English, there are words to which we refer as question words. These are the words that we place at the beginning of questions, which are called information questions. This means that the question requires an answer that contains information, not just a simple yes/no question. But today we will only be focusing on two of these question words, those question words being how much and how many. The reason we'll be focusing on these two question words today is that they are so often confused. And so today we will just be unpacking the major differences between these two question words. Now, the first thing you need to keep in mind is that both how much and how many are question words that refer to quantity. However, there are still differences between these two question words, and that's why we will look at each individual question word separately so that you can see what those differences are. Now, the first question word we'll be looking at is the question word how many. How many is the question word we use when we want to ask a question about quantity. However, we use this question word to ask questions about quantity, about things that we can count. By that, what I mean is that we can use how many for any object, anything out there that you can simply add a number before, such as 1 cat, 2 cats, 3 cats. And as you can see, I am simply counting the thing to which I am referring to in this question, and in this specific instance, I'm referring to cats. And that's why we use the question word how many, because we can count the objects that we are referring to. This is opposite to the question word how much, because with how much, we're going to be asking questions about things that we can't really count, things that require an extra unit of measure to count, such as liquids, grains, anything that you really need to add an extra unit of measure before being able to answer about a quantity. For example, if you're reading a recipe and the recipe calls for flour, nobody sits there and starts counting the individual grains of flour. What we need is an extra unit of measure, such as a cup. And with that cup, we can then answer the question about quantity of flour. So for example, how much flour do you need in this recipe? I need 2 cups of flour. And that is why we use the question word how much, because we cannot count the individual pieces of the object that we wish to count. The other reason we use the question word how much is when we're referring to money. So when someone is asking about the price or the cost of something, they will always use the question word how much. For example, how much does your car cost? Here we're referring to money, and that is why we need the question word how much versus the question word how many. Now let's jump in with some examples. Example number 1, if someone would want to ask you about the quantity of pairs of shoes that you own, they would need to use the question word how many, because pairs of shoes are definitely something that we can count. So for example, the question could be, how many pairs of shoes do you own? And as an answer, you can say something like, I have 6 pairs of shoes. Another example using how many could be, how many pets do you have in your home? And an example of an answer to that question could be, I have 2 pets at home. Now let's look at some examples using the question word how much. For example, how much water did you drink today? As a response to that question, you could, for example, say, I drank 6 glasses of water. Another example could be, how much sugar do you put in your coffee? And because nobody sits down and starts counting the individual grains of sugar, we could respond to this question by saying something like, I put 1 teaspoon of sugar in my coffee. And now finally, to look at an example of the question word how much in regards to money, we could say something like, how much did your shoes cost? And in response to that, you could answer something like, my shoes cost $35. And so, as long as you keep in mind that when you're using the question word how many, you're asking questions about objects, things, people, pets, you name it, that you can count, versus how much, in which case you're asking questions about things that you can't count without adding an extra unit of measure, you'll be just fine to ask your questions in an English-speaking environment. And so that was it for today. I hope that you found this lesson clear and easy to follow, and if you did, feel free to click that like button below and subscribe to my channel. And as always, feel free to leave questions in the comments section below if you have questions about this video or any other English-related topic. It'll be my pleasure to try to answer them in a future video of mine. And so until next class, have a wonderful week.